It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do?
Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is one.
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Kate Fisher, here in Washington, D.C., and these are the headlines of the hour. Ukraine's military says Russian forces are intensifying attacks in the eastern provinces, with the railway station in the city of Lyman being the latest to come under heavy fire.
I imagine my family in one of those houses that is now destroyed and black. I see my granddaughters running away in panic.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres tours the Kyiv region towns of Borodianka and Bucha that were shelled during Russia's offensive. He says civilians are paying the highest price in the war.
If they decide to apply, Finland and Sweden will be warmly welcomed and expect the process to go quickly.
The NATO chief says Finland and Sweden will be able to join the Western military alliance quickly, should they decide to ask for membership. China describes the Quad, a bloc of Indo-Pacific democracies created to counter China, as unpopular, after Washington announces President Joe Biden's visit to the region next month. Taiwan's daily number of confirmed COVID-19 cases tops 10,000 for the first time, in line with predictions. The health minister says infections will continue to rise. Survivors and descendants of the Holocaust all over the world send messages against hate on Holocaust Remembrance Day. 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis during World War II. This summer, the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation could add 2 more Nordic countries into the group. Finland and Sweden are preparing to submit their membership bids for NATO very soon. Both countries are traditionally neutral, but are ready to file coordinated applications in mid-May. The Prime Minister of Finland has confirmed that the government and Parliament have begun the groundwork to submit the applications soon, but has stopped short of providing a precise timeline.
The Parliament and the Government of Finland, together with the President, will assess all the implications of the new security situation and will have to consider the question of whether to apply for membership of NATO. Decision in this issue will be taken very soon. The fundamental aim is to guarantee peace for Finland also in the future.
As for the NATO alliance, they're ready to seal the deal at once and welcome the 2 Nordic countries with open arms. Speaking to the media at the European Parliament, the NATO Secretary-General has downplayed Russia's reaction, saying that countries have the right to choose their own path.
So there is no uncertainty about Finland and Sweden's right to choose their own path, because this is fundamentally about the right of every nation in Europe to decide its own future. So when Russia tries in a way to threaten, to intimidate Finland and Sweden from not applying, it just demonstrates how Russia is not respecting the basic right of every nation to choose its own path. So we are in dialogue with Finland and Sweden, and it's their decision. But if they decide to apply, Finland and Sweden will be warmly welcomed and expect the process to go quickly.
If Finland and Sweden join the alliance, they will bring substantial new military capabilities to the group, including advanced air and submarine capabilities. This will alter the security architecture of Northern Europe and help to deter further Russian aggression.
We married 1 year and 8 months ago.
Russian forces have reduced large parts of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol to ruins. The vast Azovstal steel plant complex and its underground catacombs are the last standing structures, where Ukrainian Army Captain Palomar and a Ukrainian contingent are stationed. The Azov fighters in the steelworks include Russians, Bulgarians, a Crimean Tatar, a Greek, Jews, Catholics and others. The deputy commander of Ukrainian forces in Mariupol has detailed an exclusive account of the ground situation in the city.
The fighting is happening every day, but their tactics are changing. Their new tactic is that of a medieval siege. We're encircled. They are no longer throwing lots of forces to try and break our defensive line. They are conducting airstrikes. There are approximately over 500 men with different injuries, some severe, some medium, and some minor. But it is a problem because we don't have the conditions in which to treat them in the current situation, to carry out really difficult surgeries. Also, medicine is running out, as are bandages, food and water. I hope the world now realizes its mistake. I would like to say that due to soft politics, the world has brought up a new Hitler, a Hitler of the 21st century. Everything that our soldiers do here, not only in Mariupol, but on Ukraine's territory, we are deeply convinced that we are saving not only Ukraine, but also Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Moldova, and Georgia. He won't stop here.
Meanwhile, at the United Nations, human rights lawyer Amal Clooney has urged countries to focus on delivering justice for war crimes in Ukraine. She recalled a 2017 UN Security Council vote and requested the Assembly not let any evidence sit in storage, as it did for victims of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
Human rights lawyer Amal Clooney pushed for justice in possible war crimes in Ukraine at the United Nations on Wednesday, urging countries to ensure evidence does not sit in storage, as it has done for victims of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. She recalled a 2017 UN vote to preserve that evidence around the time her children were born.
But my children are now almost 5. And so far, most of the evidence that has been collected by the UN is in storage, because there is no international court to put ISIS on trial. And when survivors ask me to explain how can this be, I can only say I am ashamed. I am ashamed that there is no system of justice to respond to mass rape and mass slaughter.
Clooney was speaking at an informal meeting of the UN Security Council. She herself is part of an international legal task force advising Ukraine on accountability for victims of the war, working with the International Criminal Court. The ICC's prosecutor, Karim Khan, opened an investigation into Ukraine a week after Russia's February invasion.
This is a time when we need to mobilize the law and send it into battle, not on the side of Ukraine against the Russian Federation or on the side of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, but on the side of humanity.
Russian diplomat Sergei Leonidchenko described the ICC as a political instrument. He accused the US and Britain of hypocrisy for supporting the ICC inquiry in Ukraine after doing everything imaginable to shield their own military. Moscow describes its February the 24th invasion of Ukraine as a special military operation and denies targeting civilians. Ukrainian Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova's office has told Reuters it is preparing war crimes charges against at least 7 Russian military personnel.
Moving on now, and the Prime Minister of India is scheduled to visit Germany next week. Prime Minister Modi will be holding bilateral meetings with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Both countries will host the 6th edition of the India-Germany Intergovernmental Consultations. Ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Germany, Minister of State at the German Foreign Office, Dr. Tobias Lindner, spoke to WION about India-Germany ties and the Ukraine crisis.
With me is the Minister of State in the German Foreign Ministry. So welcome to WION. My first question to you is, you are here in Delhi at a time when our Prime Minister will be going to Germany, an important visit, meeting with the new leadership. What will be the key focus during his visit to your country?
So our strategic partnership with India is key for Germany, especially here in the region. And we will have various issues on the governmental consultations, for sure the economy, but also technology, education, the security situation here in the region. We believe a strategic partnership means a holistic approach on all fields of policy.
You talked about various issues. Will Ukraine be one of the key focus areas? And do you see How do you see, in fact, India's position on Ukraine as well?
Yeah, for sure. You cannot meet in these days without talking about Ukraine because it has effects on the international rules-based order. And we believe that it's in the interest of all countries on this planet to uphold territorial integrity and sovereignty. So for sure we will have an exchange with our Indian colleagues on that. And we will more pull than push, I believe, India in that term. And also trying to talk about possible implications of that war to other regions in the world.
But how do you see India's position on the crisis? India, of course, has abstained at the United Nations. So any comments on that?
For sure, it's no secret that the German government welcomes every support for the resolutions in the United Nations. But, you know, I have come here to Delhi to understand the reasons and the motivation and the Indian position in that conflict. And I believe that it's also in the Indian interest that this war stops, that we have the same goals, protecting the international rules-based order, having an immediate stop of the war in Ukraine. And on that field, we are searching for cooperation with India.
And will India be invited for the G7 summit? You're the chair of the G7 and there are a lot of stories going around, so will there be that focus as well?
So I cannot make any comments on that. It's an issue of the German Chancellery, but I believe during the consultations on Monday in Berlin there will be an announcement.
Now to Twitter and its ever-evolving controversies. Days after striking a deal to acquire the social media platform, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has stirred another controversy. Elon Musk, whose takeover bid for Twitter was accepted 2 days ago, has criticised its employees, despite a promise not to disparage the company while he completes the acquisition deal. He had agreed to refrain from targeting Twitter employees as part of a 95-page agreement covering his $44 billion acquisition deal. But the latest tweet from the Tesla CEO shows him flouting that agreement and actively engaging in public ridicule, not once but twice. News agency Politico reported that Twitter's top lawyer and head of trust and safety, Vijaya Gadde, had cried in an internal meeting following news of the acquisition deal. Taking a dig at this, conservative journalist Sagar Enjeti tweeted against Gadde for blocking a story about Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden from getting shared on the social media site. Gadde's team, which is in charge of content moderation decisions at Twitter, briefly blocked a link to an October New York Post article about a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden. Replying to conservative journalist Sagar Enjeti's tweet, Mr. Musk said that suspending the Twitter account of a major news organisation for publishing it was incredibly inappropriate. Musk's intervention in the tweet thread has now triggered a flurry of negative tweets about the Twitter senior employee, and many have criticised Mr. Musk for deliberately intervening in the matter. And this is not the end of it. The Tesla CEO also replied to a potentially defamatory tweet from the right-wing commentator Mike Cernovich about Twitter's Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker, which alleged that Mr. Baker's work in a previous role at the FBI was fraudulent. Moving now to the Middle East and Jordan, one of the countries badly affected by desertification. Once a very fertile land, Jordan is now one of the world's driest countries. Local organisations are now growing native species of plants and working with herders in the hope of reviving the land and preventing further damage.
Local organizations in Jordan believe that reintroducing native plants and using smart water harvesting systems will lessen the impact of climate change. According to a UN report, desertification caused by climate change is only going to worsen. The UN Desertification Agency says that 40% of land globally is now degraded. That is because of human activities like unsustainable land and water management, poor agricultural practices, mining, urbanization and infrastructure development.
Jordan is mostly arid and semi-arid land. 90% of the land is as such, and 1% only of the land is forests. So most of the land is degraded, whether it is the rangelands or the forests. However, because the size of the rangelands in Jordan, I think it would be really a good idea to concentrate on rangelands and do restoration in that part and in the desert, and because this would lead into land restoration, the use of native plants would help in groundwater recharge, eventual groundwater recharge.
Restoring degraded land can help vulnerable communities by creating jobs for them and achieving food security, which would eventually build their economic resilience. In Jordan, the Badia is the largest geographical zone and it extends to the highland areas of the Western Mountains. The manager of the Sabha nursery in Badia believes that it is important to engage the community in climate resilience projects.
As you know, we are the people of Badia. We raise a lot of livestock, so we must take care of the vegetation cover. We must spread more awareness regarding the importance of the vegetation cover. We must fight desertification because the livestock depends on grazing vegetation. The livestock must be preserved for meat and dairy. We are the beneficiaries. If we don't care about these things, desertification will increase with time.
The Watershed Development Initiative employs local women in its plant nurseries. The Sabha nursery produces 150,000 seedlings every year and provides jobs for up to 1,000 seasonal workers each year. The Badia region is home to Bedouins who primarily rely on livestock for food and income. One of WADI's projects is the introduction of 4 native plants across 10,000 acres in the Sabha Reserve. The greenery helps restore the arid land by helping it to retain water.
WADI's mission does not only focus on the recharge of underground water, but also the increasing of the green cover to combat desertification. And it also focuses on the totality of the ecosystem. So we're working on the water, we're working on the green cover, and we're working also with the habitats of the creatures, from insects to animals, and all living parts of that ecosystem. This is part also of our national and regional and international responsibility to mitigating climate change and achieving sustainability.
Jordan's water scarcity is likely to cause more food supply disruptions, forced migration, and greater pressure on species survival. The UN has warned that some 700 million people could be displaced by drought. The UN report also mentions calls for financial support to bolster conservation and restoration in developing countries. To restore Jordan's fertile land and to stop the country from becoming a desert, better water management and smart agriculture practices are needed. If these measures are implemented on a larger scale, it would result in reduced biodiversity loss and improved soil health, which will lead to higher crop yields. Several other countries are now facing water scarcity. These measures could help them address their own land issues and increase drought preparedness. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
We shift our focus now to Africa. In 1972, a Hutu insurrection broke out against the Tutsi leadership in Burundi. The Houthi extremists attacked and killed Tutsis living in the south of the country. Between 100 to 300,000 Hutus were killed in the massacre. It was only in December 2021 that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission affirmed that the massacres constituted genocide and crime against humanity. 50 years on, the pain for Burundians is still very much alive.
This is where Letitia Ngenda Kumana's father was found. After almost 50 years, she was able to identify his body thanks to his 4 gold dentures. The 1972 massacres loom large in the collective memory of Burundi. Between 100,000 and 300,000 people were killed. Letitia was just 10 years old when her father was arrested in Bujumbura, Burundi's largest city.
We never knew where my father was taken. What I know is that they took our land. They looted everything we had. We lived a miserable life, and we had to return to the interior of the country.
Letitia's father was a senior banker and a Hutu living in Bujumbura. He was arrested by the Tutsi-dominated government, and the family lost everything overnight. Her younger sister Magnifique was a baby at the time.
There was no relief. I'm still sad. When I remember all that, I think maybe I wouldn't have had this life if it hadn't happened.
The Burundian government established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, known as the TRC, to investigate the inter-ethnic massacres and get to the truth. Since 2019, the TRC has been exhuming mass graves throughout the country, using witness testimonies to locate them. Thanks to these efforts, some families have managed to find their loved ones' remains. In the political capital Gitega alone, the TRC says it has found nearly 7,000 victims after exhuming 9 mass graves. Last December, it declared that the massacres constituted genocide.
When we say today that it is a genocide committed against the Hutu ethnic population in Burundi, it is a genocide because the state planned, organised, carried out this genocide. Because the resources of the state were used.
But not everyone shares this view in Burundi. What began on the 29th of April 1972 as attacks by Hutu extremists against Tutsis led to reprisals that quickly escalated into massacres of the Hutu elite. Some accuse the TRC of bias because the Commission's members mostly belong to the Hutu-dominated ruling party.
One must recognize that in Burundi, ethnic conflict is a constant theme which is hugely exploited. At the time when the Tutsis were in power, the idea of a Hutu menace was a constant theme, whereas today it's the opposite. It's the idea of the Tutsi menace, which is also a constant theme.
The TRC has been criticised for focusing its research on sites where Hutus were buried and ignoring those where Tutsi victims were found.
Now, all across Israel, sirens blared as the country came to a virtual standstill in an annual ritual honouring millions of Jews who were brutally killed during the Holocaust. The annual Holocaust Remembrance Day is a solemn event where Israel pays tribute to its fallen. We leave you with these visuals. Thank you for watching.
My brothers and sisters, the Holocaust is an unprecedented event in human history. I take the trouble to say this because as the years go by, there is more and more discourse in the world that compares other difficult events to the Holocaust. But no, even the most difficult wars today are not the Holocaust and are not comparable to the Holocaust.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention